David, for this final session of your last fall leadership conference, we're going to ask you to change your role. You will be our guest of honor. We invite you to view NESA's journey, the odyssey that you have been the heart of, from a different vantage point, as we all explore and appreciate the dimensions of your leadership. So, David, as I said, it's been an odyssey. To give you just a small sense of the impact of this journey, we invite you and all of our guests here to look at the screen and hear from friends of NESA's past as they reflect upon the hallmarks of NESA and their memories.
Innovative, caring, and proactive.
Excellence, family, and innovation, and I would probably start with family. NESA is is the only organization that I'm aware of its kind that creates such a tight family dynamic among faculty, administrators, and schools.
The hallmark of NESA is providing relevant support to an incredibly diverse range of schools in spirit of camaraderie and fun. I think what makes NESA difference is that sense of community.
Collegial, professional, supportive.
Through NESA's emphasis on school improvement and professional development, student learning becomes a principal goal, and it is at the very core of its purpose for existing.
The words that I would use to describe NESA are collaborative, stimulating, and thought-provoking.
I think networking is certainly one word that I would use. It's the opportunity to really bring people together. Collegiality, professional friendships, I think that's important.
I like the fact that NESA was unashamedly and driving towards being learner focused.
Never one to rest on its laurels, NESA has been responsive to the changing needs of the profession. Always been on the forefront of innovation and training in a changing landscape.
I think one of the NESA documents has the statement that collaboration is the cornerstone of our success. And I think that all the people and groups,
partnerships in NESA, these are also invited to collaborate with them.
I think that the hallmarks of NESA always have been family and innovation.
Words that I would use to describe NESA are transformative learning, partnership, and collaboration.
Is the idea of inspiration. To me, NESA was an inspirational organization. It pushed me to think higher and deeper. It pushed me to consider things that I never would have considered. And for that, I'm very grateful.
I remember the first week upon my arrival in late July in New Delhi, coming through the gates, opening my email, and the very first email message that was sitting in my inbox was an email from David Chojnacki welcoming me to the NESA family.
In 1988, and that's where we first met David.
I'm going to go right back to Rhodes at the beginning in 1974. It really opened the eyes of a young girl who was just learning about this whole international teaching experience.
Last year in Islamabad, I had decided after the church bombing and the attack on the Mary Christian School, 60 kilometers from our school, that I would send my wife and my youngest son Matt home, and I would stay to finish out the year, but that I didn't feel it was safe enough for my family to be with me. So, you know, that was a fairly difficult decision to make and certainly to carry out. And David and the NESA board were so wonderful in supporting me.
But probably my fondest memory has to do with when we decided to have NESA in October of the same year that the Gulf War was taking place. And if you remember, the invasion took place on August 2nd. Many of the schools in the NESA region had substantial enrollment declines. There was all sorts of good reasons why NESA shouldn't be held that year. It was decided to hold NESA in Cairo. It was a fabulous conference and certainly one of my fondest memories of NESA.
It was a way of life.
These voices from NESA's past illustrate how this organization's core values play out in the reality of people's lives. NESA is committed to fostering a sense of belonging and identity, of mutual support and professional engagement across the communities. Under your leadership, David, NESA has grown into an agile and optimistic community, increasingly defined by its sense of trust and its support of its members. We've invited some NESA alumni who are part of this voyage with you to share their reflections. At this time, if I could have Colby, Emily, Rob, Marsha, and Sarah come to the stage, please. So now you have to pretend that I'm Lise Doucette or a talk show host and that we're having this informal get-together. Maybe it'll be a new career. Colby Seay was literally born and raised in NESA. He was born when Gail and Mark Seay worked at the Karachi American School, when David was the superintendent there. Colby attended NESA schools in Islamabad, Jubail, and Doha. He also had me for an English teacher, so he's a very good writer. Emily Sargent-Beasley was a student in Lebanon, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and India. Emily became a curriculum leader, a principal, an assistant superintendent, and a deputy head. She's also served as a member of the Professional Development Advisory Committee and is raising 2 NESA children of her own. Emily is now the assistant superintendent in Shanghai. Colby, what memories do you have of NESA?
So, growing up in a NESA school, there were 2 events throughout the year that were always really important to me. That was the UN Day celebration and the NESA conference itself. And speaking about why those 2 events were really important, growing up in a NESA school really equipped me with this idea that I really am a global citizen, that I'm a citizen of the world, that I was creating connections with people that weren't on a superficial level. We would look past race, religion, political leaning, and I would see people for people, really. And so that's why the UN Day celebration is really important for me. But the NESA conference, you know, I was a child of an international educator, and the NESA conference was actually really important for me as well, because growing up as a third culture kid in this environment, we don't really have a lot of access to family and extended family. But going to NESA, it didn't feel like that at all. You know, the connections that we would create with teachers. I mean, teachers are people that we see for 8 hours a day, every day. They probably even know us better than our actual family. So that, you know, NESA for me was always one giant family reunion.
Thank you, Colby. Emily, what was most valuable about your time growing up in NESA schools?
Last night I heard so many of you say that what David has done for you is he's made you feel important. And maybe that's what I want to share with you, why you all are so important. As a third culture kid, we don't get to go home. We don't get to physically go to the places where we called home growing up. It is a phenomenal realization when you go back to the States and you make friends with people who are friends with their kindergarten friends, where they get to see teachers, where they get to go to a place in space where they can call up a memory. Third culture kids can't do that. So I think the most important thing that NESA did for me is what you all do for NESA kids now, is that you build memories. That's what we're left with. The memories come in so many different ways, though. It's bizarre at times. When I first joined PDAC and I came back overseas, I was able to go back to Lebanon, to Beirut. And we were coming from our hotel down to the school, and I knew exactly where I was. Exactly. I recognized the wall, and I recognized the smell. But I had never forgotten that wall, and I had never forgotten that smell. That's what I took with me. And I think when we think about our critical role as teachers and as educators, school becomes home, school becomes memory, school becomes that identity that they get to take with them. I was fortunate. I'm a family of three children, and I was probably the most introverted one of the group, and probably the most anxious. Going through NESA schools, I developed this resilience by the sheer nature of moving countries, by going to new schools, making new friends over and over and over again. And by the time I was in my 12th grade year, this thing happened that I probably wouldn't have been able to anticipate based on my first grade experience. I was the student council president. And one of my jobs was to invite a candidate for the American Embassy School who wanted to be the superintendent. And I remember in this role, feeling confident, feeling capable, but really feeling rather vulnerable, meeting a man who walked into the room and just enveloped the space. It was David. I was fortunate enough to help David get his second superintendent position by the incredible questions that I asked. Actually, that wasn't it. The questions that we were asked as a student council afterwards were, what made these candidates special and what made one of them different? And I think it goes back to a story that was shared last night. David made everyone in the room feel special. He asked questions, he cared, and it was a memory that I actually kept with me. So thanks to all of you for the memories that you're creating for your kids in your schools today. It truly does matter. It's the only thing we take with us.
Thank you so much, Emily. You can hand that to Rob. Turning to our school leaders, Marsha Aaronson was the head of school at Walworth Barber International School and served as a NESA board member. Rob Ambrogi was head of the International School of Islamabad, one of my mentors, and also served as a NESA board member. Rob, NESA seeks to foster community and support. As a school leader, how did NESA spirit support you?
Well, as I mentioned in my video clip, we had some, I think someone said fragile times in NESA at times. So post 9/11 was rough in Islamabad. Rose and I were there. She can do high school schedules like you won't believe. You go from 500 to 180 to 250 to 350 over the course of one semester. You get really good at doing high school schedules. But that wasn't the support that NESA gave, I guess. But one of the things that David did, I was on the board, and we would have board meetings, and they would be in fairly nice places, David. I have to say thank you for that. Do you remember the one in the Dead Sea? Yeah. So I'm sitting there. It's about a year after we had a terrible event in Islamabad. We lost a child. We lost her mother. It was blown up in a church. If you heard that, you lose a kid in any school, whether it's through illness or an accident or anything. It's very, very tough. It was tough having somebody blown up in a church, right? I mean, so, we got great support from everybody internally through NESA, State Department, and I think we managed to get through it. A year later, I'm in the board meeting, and the Dead Sea is pretty cool. You can sit in there, and I'm like a 7th grade kind of guy. So oh, look at this, you can float. And I'm rolling backwards, I'm doing little side flips. And suddenly, I was struck with a wave of sadness, incredible sadness. But Bob Sills was there. He's a little bit like a whale. We had Brent Much over there, and he was doing porpoise stuff. And I realized that not only was the Dead Sea holding me up and supporting me, so were my NESA buddies, my NESA brothers. I don't think we had any of our NESA sisters in the Dead Sea with us, but I think, David, that symbolically, you setting that time up for us, giving us a chance to unwind and unexpectedly deal with stuff. Thank you. It was excellent.
Thank you so much, Rob. Marsha, NESA's tagline is "Collaboration is the cornerstone of our success." Would you comment on how that was important for you as a school leader and a board member?
Well, collaboration wasn't just for the school leaders. As Colby said, your teachers felt NESA, felt supported by NESA. Students did, and families did. NESA was very, very inclusive, not exclusive. And I had the good fortune a month ago to bump into a parent of a former student of mine, a former NESA student. She had gotten the Stanley Haas Luke Hansen Award, and that family had only been overseas for a 3-year stint. And he spoke so warmly and so emotionally about the life-changing effect being in a NESA school had on his daughter and on both him and his wife. They all came to a NESA conference where she got the award, and he went on and on about the feeling of camaraderie, and he said, I wish I worked in a place like that. As a board member, one of the things I remember very clearly was at a board meeting strategic planning session once, and I'm sure it was a brainchild of David's, but he asked us to consider the naming of these conferences. And I think many of you remember this one used to be called the Fall Administrators Conference, and there was a Spring Teachers Conference. And as we reflected on just the name and what our mission was and what our vision was and what we wanted for an organization, we wanted to widen that circle. So it became the Fall Leadership Conference and the Spring Educators Conference, recognizing that we should be together and not separated. And as that circle got wider, our family grew and all of our capabilities grew as we started to recognize the respect and the value that every single member of the organization has. So that's why this 3-year retired past NESA person, I said to my husband the end of the summer, I want to go back to NESA again. That's my other family. And I still feel it's family. I still feel the contributions. I still feel the camaraderie. NESA has never been an event. It's been a year-long opportunity to collaborate, to be inspired. And we thank you for that, David, because you're the impetus behind that.
Sarah Daignault has led the business managers strand at NESA's fall leadership conferences. She led them for 15 years. Sarah, NESA strives to support sustained systemic school improvement. As a contributor to NESA over so many years, working with all of our business managers, what did you observe in terms of NESA support for school improvement?
Thanks, Rose. So the business managers are just one group at NESA that needed support. And what happened with them, I think, exemplifies NESA's commitment to school improvement. In 1999, David knew that there was more that he could do for the business managers, but he didn't have the resources, the information. It was just, beyond what he could do. And then he heard about NBOA, which was the organization in the States for business managers. We were brand new. We didn't even know we were all that good at that point. And he comes to this conference in Dallas and he finds us and he says, "You have to come work with my business managers." And I'm going, "Okay, who are you and where are your business managers?" "Oh, I'm David and I have this unpronounceable last name and we're having a conference in Kathmandu." I'm going, "Kathmandu? Okay, fine." And so what happened was I agreed, and year after year I keep showing up. And what's been great is in the most supportive way possible, David's been pushing me. What else is there? What's new? What do they need to know? And how can we do that? So as you can imagine, in the beginning when I started, it was just me and the business managers in a room off in a corner by ourselves because no one wanted to be with us. I mean, they're the people in your schools who are always saying, "No, you didn't want to be there." And so, wait a minute, hold on. This is really important. There we go. And we began to sort of expand the circle, and we invited some directors to join us. And sure enough, they showed up and began to share their perspective. And we began this amazing dialogue that broke down some borders, crossed all kinds of things. And so over the years, we've had directors and principals and all kinds of other people join us. Beyond that, the business managers figured out that maybe they could go to some other sessions. And because they figured out they need to understand the academic side of the house as much as they want the academic people to understand finances. All of this was really an amazing experience for me. It changed my life, which is why I too, who am retired, showed back up again. I heard there was a good party in Doha, and you know, everybody wants to come here. Except when the plane landed in Kuwait and everybody else got off, I thought, well, maybe this wasn't the right decision. Anyway, what I want to say is that throughout my entire time, while David was my contact, what it was David was the embodiment of the mission of NESA. And everything he did was to help all of us make the experience for the children in the NESA schools better. And for that, I'm eternally grateful and just happy to have found you guys.
Thank you all so much for representing NESA's journey to the present day. NESA began as one of the regional associations envisioned by Finus Engelmann's report in the early 1960s. The organization's bylaws were drawn up in 1964, and it was incorporated as a U.S. entity in 1968. It was fittingly started as a collaborative with a rotating chairperson among the member schools. A part-time secretary was hired in 1974. In 1978, Stanley Haas was appointed the organization's first executive director. Stanley served until 1994 when Mary Ann took over as the interim director. David was appointed the second executive director in 1996, and he has continued to serve our organization for the past 20 years. Under David's leadership, NESA has become the preeminent professional development organization in the world. Now we'll hear from colleagues across the world as they reflected on the NESA community as it is today.
Mesopotamia is called the cradle of civilization, and in so many ways, NESA is the cradle of innovation for international schools. Over the years, NESA has developed concepts and projects that have become models for the world.
The NESA community represents the warmest, most welcoming community of anybody I've ever had the privilege of working with. I've experienced this amazing combination of intellectual depth, great humor, great passion for our work, and great soul.
NESA is a welcoming community. Beyond the professional part, I feel it's open to new people like a family.
The NESA community stands alone in global education, and not just for its excellence, but because it is a model of collaboration and mutual support. Let's face it, you've got some of the strongest schools in the world who could easily take the path of competition, of secrecy, of disruption. But instead, everything I've seen over the years is the path of mutual support and collaboration.
NESA has no barriers.
It embraces all cultures and religions. To me, it represents an oasis away from world conflict.
NESA has grown more purposeful, intelligently strategic, and profoundly effective. NESA's sustained supports for instructional and leadership activities is unequaled.
The NESA community is forward-thinking. The aim is to create a better future for the students.
NESA educators are intensely dedicated to their craft and to their students. Our members model leadership, learning, collaboration, and excellence.
First and foremost committed. They are eager and ready to learn.
It kind of lights you on fire. Their enthusiasm, their knowledge base. Almost every presenter who's ever presented for NESA just is, when I asked them what was it like, before I came here, they said, wow, and just wow.
Gradually, David has broadened NESA's insular mindset to a more inclusive one, with greater involvement, investment, and commitment from the entire NESA community.
But I see NESA stepping fully into that space and continually asking the question, what can we become? And they do that, keeping learning at the core of every conversation.
NESA has changed, has increased its professional development offerings from 2 annual conferences to 4, has initiated many special projects like Aero, Virtual School, and others that have gone global.
Although technology has helped us with our mission of collaboration, the family feeling and commitment to community haven't changed. Face-to-face connections at conferences are still the #1 priority.
Every year, NESA is more and more sophisticated, intellectually hungry, wanting to dive deeper, always cutting edge, always thinking ahead for what's the next step proactively.
As sophisticated as you may become, one of the things that never changes is the value of face-to-face, person-to-person interaction. We may tweet on Twitter, and we may chat on the internet, we may have Skype conversations, but it's still those face-to-face conversations, the human contact that are doers over the course of time.
NESA's greatest strength is its people and the sense of community that they create. The ability to ask what if and to play with possibilities makes NESA such a dynamic organization.
Core values, lived ethics, a well-oiled entity with a superbly competent and humble staff.
NESA brings people together for a common goal, for a purpose greater than any one school, administrator, or teacher. There's a sense of professional generosity and selflessness.
The people at NESA, the participants, are unusually creative because they've had to become innovative and creative because they're problem solvers. They're perpetually every day solving a problem. How do we create this incredible experience with limited resources? But when you are well-traveled in a variety of experiences, you make way more connections.
NESA tries to balance both the professional and the personal. I've seen people change by coming to NESA, by being exposed to different cultures and new ideas. They grow as people, not just as educators.
It's a combination of your advanced instructional leadership and at the same time your openness to new ideas. I've always respected the fact that there's a spirit of openness, of experimentation, of willingness to try new things, and a willingness to admit error. The whole world can learn from what you're doing.
NESA's greatest strengths are its sense of community and inclusion.
These people are well read. They know their research, and yet even though they know their research, their cup is not full.
NESA members have become more professionally demanding, more sophisticated, and more focused on mission and vision.
Innovation, planning, and adaptability to changing needs. Your wise boards over the years have always chosen the highest quality leaders, then empowered them to lead. And there is no better example in the international school world than the leadership of David Chojnacki.
The Department of State Office of Overseas Schools has been a vital partner and collaborator on NESA's journey. Projects have been funded and developed in conjunction with our regional educational officer. In addition to the important outcomes of these projects, they've been a driver of collaboration across our region and beyond. Regional Education Officer B. Cameron unfortunately could not be here today. However, she has sent her remarks, which will be delivered by Kevin Schaefer, Superintendent of the American International School of Muscat, most recent recipient of the Finest Engelman Award, and long-serving NESA Board President.
Bee sent her message, and she spoke with me about what she would like to convey today. She expresses her deep desires that she wishes she could be with you, and especially for David, in this very monumental moment in the life of NESA. Bee says, in 1997, exactly 19 years ago, I joined the NESA family as the Regional Educational Officer representing the U.S. Department of State's Office of Overseas Schools, otherwise known as AOS. It was the time when the standards movement was fully engaging our schools at home, and U.S. school systems were redefining themselves. Serendipitously, David and I were each asking, how might we bring NESA member schools into this important change initiative? And how might we offer both the mutual support and professional engagement that could have a lasting benefit of supporting learning for NESA schools' children? Together, we traveled to learn more about possible models and relevant standards. We talked, we thought, we investigated, and we collaborated with the Council for Basic Education on the standards-based approach that enabled internationalization of American academic standards. In the spring of 1999 in Kathmandu, out of this collaboration, the AERO standards were born. AOS funded this project and has continued its support for 17 years. Today, over 250 overseas schools use AERO Common Core Plus to support their curriculum. Our collaboration led to establishing a pilot program to introduce measures of academic progress, MAP, as an assessment tool. Initiating MAP testing in 10 NESA schools was another important stepping stone in the NESA journey, providing sustainable projects and development that are alive today. Indeed, 170 out of 193 AOS schools use MAP to assess student progress and performance. We now enjoy even more refined standards, frameworks, assessments, and instructional practices. But as the Chinese proverb says, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. We were taking these steps together, myself on behalf of AOS and David on behalf of NESA and NESA member schools. The AERO project revealed to us that the power of working together, collaborating, and mutually supporting a project, as well as the value of prototyping, a practice that many celebrate today as an essential part of innovation and development for our schools. In 2001, NESA and AOS practiced innovation with the creation of the Virtual Schools Project, a project born out of security issues in Islamabad and the evacuation of students and teachers, yet needing to maintain school on the ground. As regional NESA officer, I was in close contact with ISOI Superintendent Rob Ambrogi, who would answer what we came to call our night-night call. This was an important check-in conversation amidst regional tensions and security threats. The goal was to keep the school open and the strategy became virtual schooling. In similar fashion to the Standards Project, we considered possible models and relevant technology. We talked, we thought, and ultimately we collaborated with the students and systems administrator at Thomas Jefferson High School in Virginia. A virtual school approach was created to ensure learning continuity in spite of student and faculty evacuation or school closure due to safety, security, and/or natural disaster. The virtual school project has continued to evolve, positively assisting schools not only in our region, but in schools all over the world. This year, 25 NESA schools participated in the virtual school project. In fact, system administrators from the 25 NESA schools just met 2 days prior to this conference, as they have for the past 12 years. Finally, a more recent NESA project has been Governance Project. Again, using the principles of starting small, seeding ideas, and generating input from school leaders and experts in the field, NESA developed its effort to support school governance. NESA board members and David, with the assistance of Rick Detweiler, have generated an innovative model devoted to principles of good governance, including transition planning regarding succession, fiduciary oversight, leadership case study in relation to school policy, and generative strategic thinking and planning for heads and for board members. This latest AOS-supported project uses the same development principles of earlier projects. School governance has become a pillar of NESA and a distinctive NESA provenance. David and Rick have shared the project's curriculum at NESA conferences, AAIE, and their work with individual schools. This seminal work is making a difference by positively impacting the governance of overseas schools throughout the world. At NESA, as David says, collaboration is the cornerstone of our success. It has been an honor for me to work in partnership with David and NESA schools to support and fund seminal and collaborative projects. I feel privileged to serve NESA and join with David to enable innovative and sustained projects to become core to NESA's mission and continuing NESA's success through the years. From Dr. B. Cameron.